I'm a guy that's 26. Each day I build with bricks. I like Star Wars playset. I'm Rich Boy J. Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and this is going to be another episode of the LEGO Star Wars MOC Showcase. This is a series where I show you some of the most awesome, beautiful, wonderful LEGO Star Wars builds that I've come across on the internet. The one thing I ask is if you find any of these builds particularly interesting or cool, please go to the links in the description and go support those builders. They're the ones who deserve all the credit. Alright, we're going to get things started off the right way by checking out this Yavin IV Command Center. This is by a builder by the name of TheCreatorr on Flickr. We'll start on the right side and then make our way over to the left side. So starting off over to the right, you can see we have this trapezoidal doorway with a Rebel Trooper making his way in, and we got a Rebel Fleet Trooper kind of guarding the way on the side. I love how he's spliced in some masonry bricks in dark tan. You can see here, just give it a nice brick pattern, but nothing too excessive. And he's also followed up on that by including these little plant pieces stuck in the wall there in olive green. I think when it comes to Yavin, olive green and dark tan works really well as a basic color palette, and of course some dark grays in there for some of the architecture. Moving on, we see this nice little wall console over here with some trans green pieces, some trans clear pieces, some white pieces, all sorts of nice computery looking bits right there to just make it look like that what old school / new school Star Wars technology. We got these two guys at a console bench right here. I have to say, this is actually a nice looking chair. He's using looks like a 2x2 bracket with a 2x2 curved slope attached to the top of it, and so just nice looking chair design. I'm always looking for little bits like this, just, you know, things that you might take for granted. Like obviously LEGO makes a chair piece, but if you don't just want to use that all the time, I try to look for interesting ways that people are achieving chairs, and I think using this bracket right here flipped on its side is actually quite nice. If we make our way over to the left side a little bit, you can see we got my man C-3PO. He's hanging out there, and we got these two very nice looking trans green hollow screens right here. Got one guy, looks like he's inspecting one of them. And as we keep moving further along, here's, I think, a better look at his chair design. This one's a little bit more elevated than the ones over to the right, but this one I think gives you a more clear indication as to how he designed it, specifically with that 2x2 bracket. I don't know when I'm going to be building something with a chair that might look like this in the near future, but this is definitely design I'm going to keep in my back pocket for some point. And then as we make our way over to the leftmost side, we have probably the focal point of the build. This is like the hollow table where they can look at what's going on at the Battle of Yavin, at the Death Star specifically. And we got Leia, Bail Organa, Jando Donna, and of course, I like how that rhymed, Leia, Bail Organa, Jando Donna, and our favorite Rebel leader, Bob Hudsell. So when I first saw this build, I saw the bald guy and I'm like, oh crap, like that's a good looking purist version of that one dude whose name escapes me. And I'm just thinking like, holy crap, like I have to know this guy's name, right? There's no way I don't know his name. And I found him, and his name is Bob Hudsell, which kind of surprised me just because I really didn't expect for there to be someone in the Star Wars universe with the name Bob. So there's some knowledge for you if you didn't know about that. But these figures all look great. I love that he's using some dual molded pants pieces. For example, he's got the Rebel over to the left side, and then this guy over here staring at that hollow screen. Nice usage of the dual molded boots. You always love to see that. The table itself also looks good. I don't know, it's such a clean looking piece right there. There's quarter, I don't even know what you call it. It's like a quarter circle curved slope almost deal. I don't know what you'd call that piece, but nonetheless, it looks quite good there. And then finally, one thing I wanted to highlight are these chrome pipes that line the upper sections of the wall. This is quite nice, not only just aesthetically, like it's a good contrast to a lot of the dark grays that we see in the wall, but it is actually accurate. I went back and just checked out one of the scenes from episode 4 where they're in like the Yavin command room, and there are actually those chrome pipes up there, so it's a good attention to detail. And even if it wasn't, I think it would just be a nice little addition to the build, just to give it a little bit more I don't know, character, color, all those things you might want to add to a MOC right there. So it's a very nicely designed MOC. I guess one thing I should mention before I close out are these whip pieces that he's using as vines in brown that are coming out of the walls there. Those also look good, gives it that kind of natural aesthetic of Yavin, especially in the interior, and just wonderful MOC altogether. And I preach this over and over again. I'm gonna say it each time because you never know whose first episode this might be, or if someone might just need to be told this multiple times until they decide to do it. But once again, this is one of those really awesome ways that you can display a pretty large group of Rebel minifigures in a relatively small build that can fit on a shelf, on a desk, something like that, and just give you some freedom, you know? So overall, very nice build. The floor is also quite good. I keep wanting to close this section out, but too many things keep popping up to me. I guess the last thing I'll say is the square pattern on the floor looks good. When you're trying to do a square pattern like that, especially anything bigger than like a 2x2 tile, the math ends up being a lot more difficult than you think. So good job to the builder for pulling that off pretty convincingly. So altogether, very nice build. If you're not thinking of creative ways to display your figures, I hope that this is at least some inspiration for you to do so. And our next build is by Darth Bjorn. It's titled Hunter Bright. This is another one of those Star Wars Factions RPG game builds that seem to be keeping this series afloat. So many of the builds that I do here are from Factions or one of those RPG games that people play because they just produce so many awesome looking builds. So this one is like, obviously I could go through and read little synopsis he gives to the build, but I kind of like to look at these builds and just derive like what's going on in them based on what I see. I'm always kind of preaching like, you know, your MOCs should tell stories in some ways, and I like trying to figure out the story the MOC is trying to convey. So, you know, you can listen to like my interpretation of the build just by my viewing of the build, and then go back to the links that I include in the description and see how well it matches up with the synopsis that he's given to this build. But from what I can tell, it looks like we have some bounty hunters with some very valuable rebels we can see over here with these carbonite pieces being used. I'm assuming we probably have two, like there's the 3 live rebels and maybe 2 of them are frozen in carbonite. We got this bounty hunter right here. Looks like he's narking these guys out to this Imperial dude right here, which is really a shame, man. Of all the things you could be in life, this is how you decide to live your life? Like, really? Anyways, this is just a gorgeous looking build. The minifigure placements in all of Darth Bjorn's builds are always top notch when it comes to not only where they're placed, but also the detail that he gives to them. So I like, for example, that, you know, he has rebels wearing scarves, you know, like it's not something that is included in like a standard rebel minifigure, but it's just a cool way to give a little bit more detail to a figure, especially like with the Rodian over here. I think that's like the Lego mask piece, but just not the mask piece, like the bandana that goes around like a Lego person's neck, flipped around to make like a scarf for the Rodian, which is cool. I love that. So good use of detail right there. We got a couple of Death Troopers also just guarding the area, so that's nice as well. This little, like, I don't know what you'd call it, plant bush piece of greenery over here, this foliage, this also looks quite nice. It kind of has an exotic look to it due to those trans green cylinder pieces that are jutting out of the middle, so that's always nice to just give it an otherworldly type of aesthetic, so to speak. And then the main part of this build has to be this giant yellow and orange building. This looks so cool. Like, I think the architecture of it is very Star Warsy. It honestly reminds me of Rebels, just the color palette itself very much so looks like something that Sabine would have painted. So I think, like, just as a Star Wars fan, like, that would kind of catch your eye and give very much Rebels feels, so that's kind of cool as well. But the design of it is also pretty nice. It's all kind of built on its side, so you can see we have some weathering that kind of takes place as streaks coming down from the top or the bottom of the building, which is cool. We have some of the paint wearing off right here, like exposing some of the light and dark grays, which once again just kind of gives you that Rebels Sabine Wren feel. We got this hollow screen right here, and I'm sure some of our lovely viewers will be happy to translate that for me. I only just need to learn Arabic, so I can just do this in video and not have to rely on someone in the comments to do it every single time. But until then, I have smarter people than me take care of that. I like these pipes that are kind of sticking out of the building, specifically with this yellow rubber band that's coming out of this like cylinder piece used as wiring. Using rubber bands as wires always looks really cool to me. And then we have more yellow rubber bands just representing some rope, which is keeping whatever these things are bundled up right here. And the top of the building just looks nice. There's some dome structures there. He's also utilizing some very, very expensive 4x4 light bluish gray dome pieces. Those things, oh my God, don't even get me started on that. But yeah, altogether, very solid looking build. The colors itself, specifically with that main building, really makes it pop. And the minifigure placement as well is just so cool, and there's always so many fun things to observe when it comes to these types of builds. So wonderful job as always, Darth Bjorn. I have no doubt I'll be featuring more of your builds here on this series. The next build is by Hypolite Bricks, and it is titled Wampa Attack. This build is terrifying and humorous all at the same time. So I will start with the humor, I suppose. The fact that he has this just giant, like, kaiju style Wampa terrorizing this rebel base is just hilarious. And he did this by design. He mentioned in the description of the build that he wanted to make the Wampa oversized just to give it more of like that scary look. And I get it, you know, it's not perfectly canon, but for a build like this where you're obviously trying to evoke a certain feel and you're trying to tell a certain story, I don't mind creative liberties being taken like that. Like, it's obviously done for deliberate purpose, and I think the results are incredible. So the Wampa itself actually looks quite nice. I love the arm over here specifically. Like, that subtle angle that the arm's positioned in looks really nice, and he's using some of those I'd call wedge 1x2 curved slopes to get the angle kind of where the elbow would be bent. So that looks really nice. And then a bunch of those like 1x1 plates with the tooth elements to represent, I don't know what you call fur maybe of the Wampa. Hopefully that's the correct terminology. And the Wampa is chewing on some appendage of some creature, whether, I don't know if it's part of this freaking tauntaun over here that has just completely been dismembered, which is absolutely gross, but I have to give credit because it's just a really good looking build with those hot dog pieces in there. And you can see like he's just like chewing the meat off the bone, and there's like the parts of the skeleton sticking out right there. I hope that Enther's not watching this, because I know he's probably feeling something in his stomach right now at the aesthetic of this build. But like, this is so cool. Like, this is like gross, but like the techniques that he used are just so incredible. You can't help but appreciate what he's doing here. So off the Wampa, let's take a break. Let's look at something less gruesome. Let's come to these guys down here. They're obviously very terrified, and that is seen through the facial expressions on the minifigures. That's another great way you can tell stories in your builds, to choose faces that make sense for your minifigures, right? Like, if it's a happy moment, you can give them a smiley face. If it's a kind of calm moment, you give them a neutral face. If it's a freaking terrifying moment, you can give them these freaking terrified faces. So these guys are obviously trying to escape whatever's going on with this Wampa over here. And we got another guy, or I guess we don't have another guy over here. So we got 3 rebels just trying to escape. And there's some interesting details in here as well, like just cool little cargo crate bits. We got, I guess, what I would consider an Easter egg with these 2 ski pieces in there. And then over on the other side, just more cargo-y bits and just cool miscellaneous things that you'd expect to be kind of hidden away in a rebel trench like this. So the details are all there in this build when it comes to, you know, this dismembered tauntaun, or, you know, these little areas of the rebel trench, and even these cool little hexagonal cargo crates over here. And even these cool little hexagonal cargo crates over here. Just tons of detail all throughout this build. I love this little gate that he's constructed right here. This is actually quite nice, and it's a nice, I think, juxtaposition having the normal one right here, and then you can see just the carnage that the Wampa has created by having him just kind of break through this section right here. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about, I think that the snow terrain detailing is also very nice. Like, I think it's pretty simple to just kind of do a bunch of tiles to make smooth snow, but he's added in a bunch of pieces to give it a little bit more texture, whether it be, you know, some of these studded pieces, some of these cheese slopes, these 1x2 curved slopes, even to these like aqua pieces right here to really just sell the image of this being a nice and icy planet. I like that. It's a nice touch of color, but to the human eye, it's very clear, like, oh yeah, this is ice. Like, these are kind of some of the colors you'd expect for that to be. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this build. But this is just, like I said, terrifying and hilarious all in one bit. It is telling a very clear story, which is something I've stressed it so many times, even in this one video, but something that I stress with all of these MOCs that I review. Like, these are some of the just coolest and most fun builds to take a look at, where, you know, the more that your eye is attracted to, that you start kind of putting together the bits and pieces of the overall story that's being told in the build. So wonderful job here, man.